Okay, guys, this is John Duncan here. I got Dr. Messina with me.
Hey, John.
Hey, Dr. Nick, how you doing?
Good, good. Glad to be here.
So, what we're going to talk about today, Dr. Messina, is, in your opinion, what the top financial concerns are of doctors. So, if you had to break that down, I know you were in practice for a lot of years, and a lot has changed in that industry. Am I correct?
Oh, well, it's changed like night and day. I started practice back in 1985, and it's almost unrecognizable now how many changes have gone on just in the structure, management, pay systems. It's a different ballgame today.
If in no order, what would you say one of the concerns are for medical professional doctors at this point?
Well, I think one of the big concerns has always been reimbursement for doctors. Insurance companies are kind of in control of things, as well as the government with the Medicare program. And doctors find that they do the same amount of work and are seeing decreasing reimbursements. And going along with the second thing is that, their overhead tends to go up as these reimbursements are going down. So what they end up doing is having to see more people to make the same amount of money and feel like they're kind of on a treadmill, and fatigue factor sets in.
Basically, like seeing more and more just to stay in the.
Just to keep your head above order, just to stay even. And so, myself included, a lot of doctors are thinking, oh my God, I'm working too hard. I wish I could find another way to get some money coming in. And I know everybody kind of looks to the stock market. I've got a chunk of money. I want to see that bringing some in to give me a feeling of security, because the face of medicine is ever changing, which gives a lot of docs a feeling of uncertainty, financial uncertainty.
So the concern would be, let me make sure I got this right. So to be uncertainty.
Yeah.
And I know that, like, I'm on a prescription, and it's one of those, you have to go. It used to be every 3 months to the doctor. Now the doctor just changed it to every single month I've got to go over there to the doctor for really no reason. Do you think that's just because he's just trying to cover overhead, or?
Absolutely, because a lot of doctors do a lot of unreimbursed services like phone calls, prescriptions, medical reports, and the bureaucracy of medicine has grown so much. What happened when they went to managed care years ago, what they did is they took their whole bureaucracy system and dumped it into the doctor's office.
Oh,
they
wow.
they decreased the fees and now made the doctors do all the paperwork. So the doctors have to hire more and more staff to keep up with the endless flow of paperwork and forms and regulations. So, the insurance companies were brilliant in that way. They cut their overhead, increased their take, decreased our reimbursement, and increased our overhead.
More staff to handle the claims, or what?
Oh, just the yeah, the paperwork involved, insurance claims. Every insurance company has different paperwork, different formularies. It's not one general thing, and you can't just be associated with one insurance company. So there's just utter chaos going on, and you need manpower to deal with that, and computers. And now they're going to like electronic submissions, so you need to buy software. So the overhead keeps going up and up and up.
Like, if you were to put a percentage on it from, say, 10 years ago, do you think it's increased twice, or what would you say?
It's been increasing. I remember I was in primary care and family practice, and if your overhead was a hair under 50%, you were doing pretty good. Now I know a lot of guys that their overhead is up quite a bit above that. And that's why a lot of doctors are, becoming employees because their overhead is killing them, and they can't keep up with all the changes to these systems. And they, go into these big, and they work for hospitals, or they work with, medical companies that take care of all the administrative details, and they get a salary, which they don't like, because they kind of lose their autonomy. But it becomes a question of what pain is greater, dealing with all of the bureaucratic chaos, or making less and marching, to the beat of the drummer that runs the practice.
So would you say, like, the main driver of this is what? Would it be the government, or am I missing what you're saying?
It's the government with government programs and insurance companies. Medicine has become big business. Unfortunately, chronic illness is big business, because as long as people stay alive, no matter how sick they are, the drug companies keep coming up with ways to manage that illness. Hospitals are continued to be full because of ill people, and everybody's making a lot of money from medicine. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Technology is increasing. They're coming up with new and better treatments. And the people that are kind of on the low end of the totem pole, believe it or not, are doctors.
The doctors are shouldering the cost. Like, they're getting, from what I'm hearing, I'm just trying to understand it, but from what I'm hearing, they're getting paid. You told me one time, what was that on, what's that thing you're supposed to do, the colonoscopy or whatever,
Yes.
where they used to get paid like,
Ooh, they used to get paid quite a bit of money. Over $1,000 per procedure. That got cut down to $300 per procedure, and they had to make it up in volume.
so it just became like a, what'd you call it?
An assembly line.
Assembly line, just to
Stretchers,
make a few
people
dollars.
sitting out in the hallway. It was kind of like, at the airport where they have the planes queued up for takeoff. The last time I went for a colonoscopy, I was on a stretcher in a line of stretchers.
Oh my gosh. Really, we shouldn't have put this as financial. This should just be top concerns of doctors. The reality of it is that it sounds like stress has got to be higher than it ever was.
Yes.
I mean, do you think that today's doctor in medical school realized he was signing up for this?
I'm not sure. I've met some younger doctors, and again, they're coming out with a different philosophy. I think they're coming out thinking that they're going to go to a salaried position. Back in my day, everybody wanted to go out, be independent, start their own practice, build something of their own, kind of an entrepreneurial spirit. Now the younger doctors are kind of resigned to going out and getting a job. I know a lot of young doctors are doing what's called locum tenens work, where you just keep traveling and switching your location sites and getting paid by a locum tenens, company. They're looking more for, a laid back lifestyle, and not really building something and accumulating a good amount of wealth.
Interesting. So financially, I'm looking at all this stuff here. What do you see coming in the future? Is it going to get any better, or where do you see it?
I think it's going to become more and more segmented. I think there may be a chance where we do end up with socialized medicine. I could see primary care being taken over by nurse practitioners and physician assistants in the future, because nobody's going into primary care anymore because the volume is just tremendous. I think a lot of people like myself go into medicine because we were altruistic. We love to help people. We love to practice our skills and provide relief for the suffering, and also to help people stay healthy. However, it is a job. And I remember when I started, I sat down with a financial planner and he got me squared away, and he set me up with life insurance, disability insurance. He started a deferred benefit plan for me. And, I worked hard and I had some money to put into all those vehicles. And I did that for about 20 years, John. I was never really impressed with what was going on in that deferred benefit plan. Always wish I could invest in something that would have gotten me more growth, because as the years went on and I became more and more fatigued, I would have liked to have the option maybe to slow down, see less patients, do less, but the financial need kept me operating at a high level. And I think that's going on today with a lot of doctors, where they enjoy what they're doing, but they'd like to do it more on their terms. And I always run into a guy, hey, do you got a good stock tip? A good stock tip? I've got 20 grand, where can I put it where I can make a lot of money? Doctors are super busy, but they're looking for some type of financial security as well, just like anybody.
So because of the higher overhead and having to work much harder to get the same result.
The bottom line, if you don't show up and lay hands on people, you don't get paid. And you can use physician extenders like, physician's assistants, nurse practitioners, things of that sort, but you still got to pay them. So somebody's got to physically be there in order for money to come in. And what I always fantasized about was being able to use some of the money I was earning and put it somewhere where I didn't have to physically be there to get some money coming in. And if I had that cushion, I could practice more on my own terms rather than having to, be on that treadmill just to keep my nose above the water.
So really that would be like, I guess I'm just trying to phrase what you were saying. It's kind of like wanting some sort of light at the end.
Like an exit strategy, in the old days, doctors had an exit strategy. They would practice for as long as they wanted, and they would sell their practice, and that would be their retirement. That went the way of vinyl records. Nobody's doing that anymore. Hospitals are now acquiring practices, but they're basically really buying lists of people, and then they force the doctor to work for 3 to 5 years, and they basically work off what they're paying them anyway. Mm-hmm. And it's not the nest egg that it used to be.
So in an ideal situation, they would have a clear exit strategy
Yeah.
and they could
We,
actually see, it's a question I always ask of clients, kind of like is, if you think about it, the real gauge of how successful whatever strategy you're using, work, business wise, financially, whatever, is your life getting more efficient as you go?
yes.
Or is it just becoming, it is what it is, and you're going to do it till you can't do it? And from what I'm hearing from you is based on, higher and higher overhead, the the throttling down, if you will, isn't. That's probably a real concern of most doctors. Is like they're not really able to.
Back in the day, it was easier to, for instance, you come out of medical school, you have debt. The reimbursements were such that your debt could be paid off easily in a couple of years.
Oh
And
yeah, I didn't even think of that.
doctors made good money, and you would use that money and put it in all the things that the planners tell you to put it in. And, life would go fairly well. You think about retirement and, you start throttling down, and then back in the day you sell your practice, you get a nice little lump, and then you go on off into the sunset. But that's not the way it's structured now.
So yeah, I mean the debt alone can be.
Oh, the debt now is astronomical. The price of education has, since I went to medical school, oh my God, it's unbelievable. It's like buying a very high-priced home now. It's like coming out of medical school with a luxury home mortgage.
And then try and go get a mortgage.
Exactly.
So in your opinion, like what would you suggest to somebody that is doing this right now? And then I'll give you some thoughts, but what do you suggest?
You know, I, as you know, John, I don't practice anymore, and I kind of switched gears because I did get burnt out on this, and I became more entrepreneurial. And what a lot of doctors don't realize is that there are other ways to use their credibility to generate additional income. And, the one thing I would tell doctors to do right from the get-go is, besides practicing medicine, look for another money pipeline somewhere along the line to kind of have another flow of income coming in. I think that's essential. The other big problem with doctors is taxes. Oh my God. You've got to have a really efficient tax strategy, because if you don't, no matter how much more you make, the taxes just eat it away. So you get to the point where, if you make 200,000, you want to make 300,000. That difference in taxes between 2 and 300,000 eats away all of that hard work that you've done to make that additional money just go away to taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And again, having an investment strategy that's safe is important too, because a lot of doctors get desperate and they kind of roll the dice and kind of chase things on Wall Street, and it becomes kind of like going to the casino. And as we all saw back in 2008, a lot of people got wiped out. And, as I know now, there are safer ways to weather those kind of storms, which if they put in place in the beginning, they're not going to be, knocked off course if something like that happens. And again, one of the big concerns of all doctors is that we're all human, is having something happen during the practice of medicine and getting sued and losing everything. So also setting themselves up to safeguard against that type of risk, I think, is essential when starting out. Security against lawsuits. I mean, we all have malpractice insurance, but what a lot of doctors don't realize, you get sued 3 times in a row and the malpractice insurance drops you. I had that happen to a surgeon friend of mine back east. Great surgeon, and I mean, this guy was competent. He just had 3 really bad cases close together, and he got dropped, and now he's teaching somewhere. He's no longer able to practice as a surgeon because no malpractice company will touch him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's just, it sounds like a very tough career at this point.
It's challenging.
Yeah. Well, I'll just add a couple things here. Some of the things you mentioned as far as the tips, it goes right along with what you and I have talked about a lot. And essentially, there's 3 pillars of wealth. And you almost hit them right on the head right here. Number 1 is tax strategy. And what I mean by tax strategy isn't qualified accounts. Every doctor I run into has a big qualified account. Because why? Because the CPA said go defer the income. Well, if you're if you're going to be in the medical field and build some assets and so forth, when qualified plans started, the top tax rate was 70%. Now it's nowhere near that. And we've got a government that's spending $1 trillion a year more than they take in. And why that's important is if you're building assets up, and the last thing you want to do when you retire is then be still in a top tax bracket. Would you want to be in a top tax bracket for the rest of your life?
No. And that's one thing I never realized with the deferred benefit plan is, I always assumed, well, you'll start taking it out when you need it, and oh yeah, there'll be tax there. But then when you start doing the math, you see a quantity of money in that deferred benefit plan, but it's illusion because a percentage of it belongs to the IRS. And, say you want to take out $100,000 a year and, the tax rate's 35%. Well, you got to take out 135 and 35 you give to Uncle Sam. So if you were planning on living on that much a year, you have less than what you thought. And I think a lot of doctors really don't pay attention to that.
No. And I'll tell you right now, just off of that right there, I'll just mention 3. I'm not going to go into detail, but instead of a deferred account, you can do what we call 401k condo. That's using real estate instead of using a qualified plan. Way more flexible. You actually get a deduction instead of a deferral. Deferral is just kicking the can down the road to an unknown interest rate. I always look at it's like playing chicken with the future tax rates. Who knows what they're going to be? Second possibility would be what's called conservation easements. And these are for people that are up there. If you're making $300,000-400,000 and above, there are groups out there, some of the best in the country work with our firm, that do conservation easements. And those can save, again, this is tax elimination, not deferral. So that's another possibility. And then there's insurance programs out there that can offer some serious tax deduction. Those are just 3. There's others, but that is advanced tax strategy. Deferral like qualified accounts, like 401k, defined benefit, all that. You know what that is to me? That's a cop out. That's a cop out because it's not looking at real, like when a company like Amazon doesn't pay any taxes in 2017, 2018, they weren't deferring taxes, they eliminated taxes. So real strategy is using things that average people like your employees are using. They're fine for them. Somebody's in a 401k making 50 grand a year. When they retire, that 401k and their Social Security, they'll be fine. They won't be in the top tax bracket. And so that's just one thought there. Number two on the pillars is something you mentioned over here. I think it was, number one on your list, create another form of income. Passive income, or pipelines, as I like to call them. Those can be multiple different things. They could be real estate. It could be even finding some other type of company that offers complementary services that would help your patients, that you're like a licensee. You're like George Foreman with the George Foreman Grill. You know, you've got X amount of patients that could use this. That creates a pipeline that you don't have to pay the overhead and all the nonsense to, right?
Right. And
then number three of the three pillars of wealth is leverage. Leverage. And I'm writing terrible today, Nick. But leverage is the difference between having enough to fund your private wealth and your practice and growth and all of it, and creating these. So what leverage does, and here's what's interesting, this is what a lot of people don't understand, and a lot of doctors probably never even seen it before. When you have, like, what is the actual valuable thing in a practice? Do you know what it is?
The actual valuable thing in the practice is, goodwill, reputation.
I'll tell you what, I phrased it wrong.
From a financial point of view.
From a financial point of view, what would a bank loan
on? Your gross receipts over the past several years.
Basically your profit.
Yeah.
So if let's just use an example. Say, and I'm going to use a crazy example just for fun. Say your net worth is 0. And in your business account, you've got just enough to make this, so we're just going to call it 0 because you have just enough to pay all the employees and pay the rent. I'm just going to use worst case scenario. You've got 0 personal wealth, maybe even negative. Maybe even you have cars and ex-wives and everything, whatever's going on. It is what it is. So this is personal wealth. This is business. And maybe you have equipment and things, but all those are leased, so they're not really yours. This profit is what most business owners, regardless whether physicians or whatever, the profit is what is ignored. But let me show you something. If you own a practice, and let's say that the profit was $1 million a year, I'm just using a round example. And that practice, without you there, you could just insert another doctor and it would go on and on. Obviously, there might be, let's just say it is really relationship based, but some of them aren't. Some of them, medically, it doesn't have any relationship. The further the relationship part of it is, the higher the number. But to give you a range, if it's all relationship based, you're probably going to get about 1 times revenue or 1 times profit. So 1 million. If it's totally removed from that, but it's a medical type of practice, you're going to probably, 5 to 6 times that revenue. So that means, $5 to $6 million. We'll just call it $5 million. Here's why that's important. I'm taking this to give you a lesson for the people that'll see this. If 2 things. Number 1, if this guy's sitting here with no personal net worth, there are ways to extract this number from the business and have this start coming over here and working for him. And now have $5 million roughly working for him, growing at interest. That's number 1. Number 2, he's able to, the way that works is we use an insurance program that does that. I'm not going to get into all the details on that, but also he would then have maximum insurance coverage using this one piece that's sitting in his practice. That's not, it's almost like having a paid off house and you earn 0 on the equity. Like if you own a house for $500,000 and it's paid off, that 500 grand is earning 0, right? So it's the same concept, but here's the real issue, Nick, Dr. Messina, sorry, is this. Remember back over here, we were talking about lawsuits when you said losing it all is a concern?
Yeah.
By accessing this, you know what you're able to do? This number is actually what they would sue you on. They don't care about anything else. I mean, obviously, if you have a huge net worth and a huge business value for whatever reason, just equipment and things like that, or buildings, but they're going to sue you assuming, like, they're not going to take your building. What they want to look at is your profit. So this is when they calculate. There's been a lot of business owners sued that thought they didn't have anything to sue for. When an attorney's going to go, let me see your books. You're making $1 million a year. That equates, if we sold this business today, to X. We're going to sue against that.
And then they garnish the future salaries, don't they?
Yes. Now here's the point. If you're able to, and I'm not saying everybody on here can do this, but there are strategies, if you're qualified for it, to extract that money, have it go to work, and also when that's done, the bank puts, I call it, I don't want to say it the wrong way, but it's like a fake lien. It's a lien against your profit, but it doesn't cost, it's not a lien because the money's actually right there to pay off the lien at any time. But anybody that would be looking at the practice to sue would see I'm just using round numbers here. They would see a $5 million lien against the profit. Guess what? It blocked with a firewall your income. Now, what we're looking at here, Nick, just to keep it real, this is advanced planning. This isn't going to your, XYZ advisor and talking about where the next Amazon stock is going to be. This is protecting the business, which is the big asset, which is really based on the profits, right?
Yeah.
And blocking that. But here's the beauty of this. This is just one of many programs that are out there. But this program, the other point is that it takes that $5 million that's a business, they're loaning to the business, and there's a way to structure it to get that money over into personal wealth so that even if he lost the business or was sued or whatever, it's not even part of the business. How powerful is that?
Wow.
And this takes this guy back to that's why I wanted to go through these first to see what the concerns were. It takes this same person who had no light at the end of the tunnel and immediately creates a light that's not 40 years from now. It's maybe 5, 10, 15 years max.
So John, that $5 million is sitting in an interest-bearing account, but
Yeah.
you've got to pay interest on that loan, right? What
Yes.
with that?
So I'm just, and again, Nick, we're just using round numbers here, but 5 million right now, the interest rates are running around 4%. You could control that with about 200,000 a year. But here's the beauty. Again, because we do only advanced cases, there are companies out there that can create and structure that to where that is tax deductible. This person in California, because he's at $1 million a year, he's going to be at 50% or above in taxes. The interest is 200,000. That becomes a deduction. So take out the tax, 50% tax savings. He's controlling 100K, or he's controlling 5 million for 100,000 a year.
And then he's making whatever interest on a yearly basis that it's sitting in that account.
That's correct. Now, in this whole program, there's some insurance charges and so forth, but the insurance charges are actually like a fraction of what the tax savings is. Like the tax savings is so monumental, it's unreal. And I didn't want to get lost in that. I was just trying to get, going back to the concerns, and I'm just trying to show that there's ideas out there that are well beyond average, if you will. But think about this. This is a question, and this particular type of strategy, because we use this one quite a bit. Look at this. You're back in practice. Go back a few years. You're back in practice. If you were taking 100,000 a year, how many years would it take you to save $5 million?
Wow.
50 years.
50 years, I don't have that.
And even at 7%, it would take about 25 years. Who wants 20? That goes back to that no light at the end of the tunnel. It's like my mom used to say to me, takes money to make money. What a lot of people, doctors and a lot of businesses owners don't understand is that the value of their business has nothing to do with what they have in checking account or out, a lot of times what they have out in the equipment. It's all right here setting in their profits. And and I'm not saying everybody qualifies for this. To qualify for something like this, you need to be at $1 million a year in profit for it to make sense for this particular program. And you need to have some net worth, and you got to be in decent health. But if all those are in place, we've seen this just immediately do some crazy cool stuff. But the point to you and me is, would you rather, let me just take it out here just real quick. Say, instead, this doctor says, I can squeeze out, after lifestyle taxes and everything, 100,000 a year. And I'm going to put that at 7% or even 10%. I'll put 10%. End of the first year, 110,000. Take it on out to 10 years. He's still going to be, think about it. He's going to be probably $1.5 million, $1.6 million total. Mm-hmm. Let's say 1.6 million. This thing started at 5 million. And here's the math on that. If you think about it, 5 million.
10 years.
Let's just say that it earned 6 and cost 4. So there's only a 2% spread, just to keep it as basic as possible. 2% on 5 million. What's that? 100 grand in profit, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's using 100 to go make 100% return on his money with a 2% difference.
And he doesn't have to bear the market risk with that. because it's
Zero market risk. The banks, in fact, don't allow the risk because they're putting so much money and they want it in something completely market, non-market driven. So zero market risk. But what the point is this: he's using 100,000. I mean, because you're going to look at this, the real account. I'm just using raw numbers here, 6%. At the end of first year, he's at 5.3 million in there. Versus this at the end of 10 years doing it his way. In fact, I went way over on that because he's putting 100,000 in. It's going to be more like $1.2 million after all that, even with interest. Look at that. That's in first year. Take out a little bit because there's some insurance involved here. Let's say he's at 5.25. Which account do you want? And in this case, he's got 5. Say this is a 50-year-old doctor. He'd probably have around 10 million of face permanent insurance as well. So this guy over here, no light. This guy over here, doesn't matter whether he dies, gets sick, nothing matters because he's got it going on. This program, in fact, I have to mention this. I didn't know we were going to get into this today, but I just wanted to throw an idea out here. This program was actually designed for surgeons down in Florida that were afraid of getting sued. It was designed about 15 years ago. But nobody's heard of it because most advisors don't even know how it works because they work with average clients. They don't work with people at the higher end. So to wrap it all up, or let me ask you this before we wrap it up. Any questions? I know I covered a bunch of stuff here to John Madden. I love my John Madden style.
No, that pretty much covers the concerns. And, in total transparency, John, I've been your client for 10 years, and my only wish is that I met you 30 years ago and had instituted a lot of these things because, my course has changed dramatically in the last 10 years. I just wish I had another 20 years of it preceding that because I've been through so many planners in the past, and I've never heard about any of this from any one of them.
Well, I'll tell you this. If you'd have met me 30 years ago, which I've been in the business just coming up 30 years, I didn't know all this stuff either. It's been a process of learning, growing, and you've been a great help. And, I always laugh and call you my constant client because you're so smart in so many things, and money's one of them. And the 3 pillars, the way I look at it is like this. It's so simple. Everybody's like, if you watch the news, they tell you focus on what? The market, what's going on, all the chaos in the world and the political stuff, all this stuff going on. Here's the deal. If this came from studying $100 million plus estates and big companies like Amazon, if you have, this is the exact order right here. Boom, boom. Actually, I would put leverage as number 2, the better order. Tax strategy frees up so you can get leverage. Then you create massive amounts of pipelines. When you have number 1 alone, it actually will give you a better outlook. When you start adding leverage and passive income, though, this all goes away. And like me and you were always talking about, what is the ultimate goal? Ultimate goal. Break one thing, the time for money trap. I don't care if you're a doctor, I don't care what you do. When you break that, you are now financially independent. And you cannot, I argue that you cannot do it. Where's this guy? You can't do it like this unless you want to wait till you're about 85 years old.
And by then, who cares?
Maybe your kids or grandkids
Yeah.
will actually break the tie. They'll never go to work. They just won't go to work. But this is something that very few people in society ever do. But once you do, what I have seen with actual clients is their productivity actually goes up because all the stress is gone. They can go do the things they really wanted to do.
I mean, when you first explained this to me, it seemed so logical. I mean, you're freeing up the money with the tax strategy that was already earmarked to go to the IRS. You're taking that and you're leveraging it and getting a bigger amount of money that you now control. It also has a tax deduction on the front end if you're incorporated, and you're making safe income on the difference between what the loan costs and what it's paying in interest. And it also is set up like a firewall against getting sued. It just seems so logical.
So for doctors, especially, the leverage also equals a form of asset protection.
Yeah. And that in itself, you know, that account where it's growing on the difference of what the loan cost and what you're earning on it. The other thing that I learned from you is, unlike an IRA or a SEP or something like that, all the growth in that end of it is tax-free, isn't it?
Yeah, because we're using, you're talking about this one?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
what we're using as an insurance plan,
right.
and now a lot of doctors have seen those, but what we're doing is hyper funding it to the brim.
You're using it like a rich person.
More money.
You're using it like a Roth for rich people.
Yes, absolutely. And then the way the money comes out is income as via a loan. So it is not even a reportable income. So it's non-reportable. It doesn't affect anything. I mean, in a perfect world, you'd retire and be drawing $1 million a year out of this thing and not paying a dime of tax and getting full Social Security and not having that taxed.
And you don't have to pay that loan back because it'll just come off of the death benefit, right?
You can structure it like that. You can pay it off. There's no real reason to pay it off.
Yeah.
The plan itself will continue to pay that loan interest after the build on these is anywhere from 3 to 5, and preferably, you know, it depends on the age. You can be out to 10 years, and you just build it from depending on age and so forth and health. But it's a complex program, but it's simple what it's doing. It's basically you're partnering with a bank and an insurance company, and you could even say the tax code. And all three of these are making, you know, you much better off in this particular program.
You know, John, what would you say would be the minimum? Like, if there's a doctor out there, you know, he's doing okay. Obviously, one answer is the younger the better because you get more advantage. But what would be the minimum somebody could be making in what their net worth would have to be to even like get started on a low end form of something like this?
Well, here's what's interesting. Like, that you brought up a point I didn't even cover here. When you're calculating, like, here's the real minimums. But before anybody freaks out, let me show you what I'm talking about. You need to really be in around $1 million a year in profit to make this happen in the right way. Number two, 5 million net worth. But before you freak out, it includes the business valuation. So in this particular case, say this guy here was making $1 million a year, and let's just say we valued his business because of his relationships and so forth. Say that was $3 million, just the business itself, and he had $2 million between his other assets. He qualifies. Like, he doesn't have to have 5 million cash setting off to do this. And if his business as a physician, maybe it's even somebody that owns the, what were you telling me, like the medical spots, things like that.
Medical spa, or even like somebody that owns an urgent care center or something of that sort.
But the point is, hands off. If he isn't even involved, but he owns it, now that factor could be 5, 6, or more times that revenue. So in that case, 1 million a year times 5, he's at the net worth level. So it's not that hard to get done. But could you qualify a little bit lower than that? You can, but we don't like to see people try and do this under that because we don't want any problems. We want people to be happy in this, it shouldn't affect any other factor of your life.
Their lifestyle. Yeah.
There are plans. And again, what I wanted to focus mainly on today, Nick, is this 3 pillars, because you can do them up. What is that? There's how many ways to skin a cat? Like, there's a lot of ways to do it. We kind of got off on a tangent here, which is good we did. But there are plans that are below this that do some of the same things as well.
Kind of like a starter plan, training wheels on your way to this.
Yes, absolutely.
But
or maybe you're not actually ever wanting to be doing these type of things, but you're a little more conservative. What I'm saying is there are scaled down plans, as well as there are planned or ideas for the doctor that's 60 years old that's worth 30 million, maybe a plastic surgeon or whatever, that you can use. It still always goes back. This is what my point is. It always still goes back to here. If you had $0, zero anything, it still goes to pillars of wealth, because this is how wealth is built, not focusing on a market, not looking at chaos constantly.
Yeah. So good stuff. Like I always say, man, I wish I knew about this stuff 30 years ago. And in any regard, even the, variants of this plan, and because you've showed them to me, makes so much more sense than going the deferred benefit route, which everybody is offered. I don't know why they just keep offering that. It seems to me like it's setting up a hidden tax bomb.
Yeah, when those started, the top tax rate was 70%.
So it looked like a deal.
Now we're setting under 40%, right?
Yeah, but with what, $12 trillion national debt, you think taxes are going up or down?
Well, even beyond that, they're devalued. Not to get lost, but the dollar itself has lost 86% of its value since 1971. What that means is they keep deflating the purchasing power, which means even in retirement, you're going to, from things like Social Security and even if you own rental properties and stuff like that, the dollars are going to be coming in a lot higher, which is, because I always call it would look at it as the double kick in the wallet, right? When you earn more, we have progressive taxes. So as you earn, the tax rate goes right with it. But if they're decreasing the value, the purchasing power, well, you're earning more and more, but it's really not more and more. It's just more numbers. And so it's forcing you into higher and higher tax rates. It's the double kick in the wallet.
Well, this would be something to talk about at another time, but that is just horrible.
I was going to call it the double kick and something else, but double kick in the wallet works. Just saying.
But maybe that's a good topic for another time. But I heard you talk about ways to beat that as well.
Well, again, anything and everything I talk about will base back off of
Those
the three pillars and then tie in strategy to get there. So there's specific strategy to get there depending on your level of assets, income, etc. But this is what they never taught in my first 20 years in financial business. No one ever taught anything. And even today, nobody talks about any of this. I had to find this working with super high net worth clients and research and study. And the fact is, it's just not common knowledge. It's not common.
I had never heard of it before. And, I dealt with I took care of a lot of, financial people in a very affluent part of the country. And I've been to cocktail parties. I never heard any of these concepts discussed. Never.
Well, it's something that it's almost like a game of, what do you want to call it? Like a game of keeping your eye on something that doesn't really matter. Well, just imagine, I'll show you what I'm talking about. If you had all three of these working like a charm, you had your taxes down to almost zero using these type of things, not deferring, eliminating, becoming like Amazon. Passive income streams, not only one, having multiple, they just keep growing. And you had leverage that kept growing too. Do you care what's going on over in a stock market?
No.
Do you care what's going on in the chaos? I mean, maybe you care a little bit, but you're not beholden to it. Like, I don't know if I can retire. That's the difference. That is the difference, that it took me 10 years of intense study to figure this out at a different level.
Good stuff as usual, John.
Well, hey, I'm going to just back it all out here, and we will call it a day on this. Thanks a lot, Dr. Messina.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime.
And with that, whoever's watching, I hope you enjoyed as much as we did putting it together.